You probably remember me from yesterday. I'm with Procore Technologies. I wanted to start us out. I'm going to be introducing Barbara Rez, but I actually know Barbara personally. When we first launched our Women in Construction initiative about 2.5 years ago at our conference, Groundbreak in Austin, Texas.
Hi. Nice to be here. What a great crowd. I am going to apologize in advance. I'm going to be looking at notes on and off because I've got a lot of things to say and I want to make sure I cover everything. But we'll start out by me giving you a headline from the New York Times, not just any paper, the New York Times. First all-female spacewalk canceled because NASA doesn't have two suits that fit. Now, I don't know how you received this, but I was, what? Women have been in the space program for a long time. They don't have two suits. And the first thing that hit me, and I made a connection here, was construction. The PPE and the PPC, personal protective equipment and clothing. We don't have it. Women are wearing gloves that are too big. The manufacturers that are doing it, that are modifying what they have, are making them smaller. But it's not just that women are small. We're not exactly like men, but small. We're built differently. Our hands are different. Our eyes are different. Goggles don't fit. Gloves don't fit. So, I said, why is this? And the only thing I could think of is that people in male-dominated industries have not internalized the fact that we're there, even though we're there in small numbers, but we're there. And I think that's why. It's not that they don't care as much as they don't think about it. And so one of the things that we want to do, or we're going to do, is let people know we are here, and we're here to stay. So we're going to move on from that. All right, now I wrote a book. It's up there. By the way, all my information is up there. So, and I take emails, I take phone calls, I take it, whatever you want. The name of the book is All Alone on the 68th Floor. And it's a metaphor because this Trump Tower, which is 58 stories, but Donald calls them 68. It's true. I used to go up to the top of the building and I would look down on the city and I would just think, I'm at the top of the world. And I was alone and I would just think about the fact that I had reached a pinnacle in my experience and my success in my career that maybe I didn't even think I would attain. But the second part of it was that I realized that there was no one behind me. I really was alone. There was no army of PMs and supers and estimators and people that were going to come and replace me. There were just women. There weren't women in the industry. I was alone. So that was the title of the book. And things have changed, but nevertheless, we're not in the numbers, and I'll talk about this later, that we have to be. My son came up with the subtitle, How One Woman Changed the Face of Construction. And, I first said no. And then I thought, okay, I've made some inroads and I've affected people's lives. And more I'm learning, I've affected more people's lives. So, but the fact is that I didn't change it and it isn't changed. So the title of my talk here, How Women Change the Face of Construction, is going to be How Women Are Changing the Face of Construction, or how women are trying to change the face of construction, because we have a lot of things to do before we're there. And I look at some of these articles and some groups and people promoting the fact that women are in construction now, and it's great, and I want it out there. I want people to see that women are getting into construction, but we're not in any numbers. In the trades, we're still, and I'll go over this in a minute, 3% in the trades. That's nothing. And we're adding to it. What are we're maybe making it 3.2%. I mean, we're not there, and it's not time for congratulations. It's not time for complacency. We got to really be going after this. We have to make something happen here. So, we are changing. Things are going on, but we got a long way to go. I want to talk to you about three things today. Inroads that we've made, what we've done, what's been successful, what we have to do or what we can do, and the big three. I'm going to talk about the big three, and that's discrimination, intimidation, and sexual harassment. And I'm going to, in the middle, give you a little bit of my life story. People are interested in it. It's kind of fun. So let's begin. And I'm going to give you some statistics. 9% of people in construction are women. That's what they say. That's what the latest reports are. I saw something with 12, but there was nothing to back it up. And I don't think in 2 years it went from 9 to 12, especially these 2 years. So we're going to go with 9. Two-thirds of them are administrative roles, office roles. So what you got in construction trades is 3%. I just mentioned it before, 3%. You gotta think about that, 3%. The first time I heard that number was in 1978. President Carter issued a executive order calling for all construction sites, that are federal construction sites, must have 6.9% women in the work crew. And that never happened. So we were at 3% in 78, and we're 3% now. Project managers, 6 to 7%. 6 to 7, not even 10. Engineers, 10-ish. Architects between 20 and 25, maybe because the numbers are skewed a little bit because of interior designers, which is more dominated by females. So that's the situation on the ground. That's what we've got. So we got to talk about how we're going to change things. And the first thing I say is, what's the impact of women? And can women really have an impact of construction? And we got to look at how construction is perceived. And the way to look at it is look at how the construction worker is perceived. And it's not good. I'm going to tell you that 95%, and this is an astounding number, 95% of companies surveyed said that they had difficulty finding workers in this country. And that's the truth. Because we have so much work and we don't have enough skilled work to do it. And one of the reasons for that is that baby boomers, my generation, are retiring, not me, but they're not working anymore and they need to be replaced, and millennials don't want it. They don't want any part of this. I read a survey which blew my mind. Millennials in large groups said that they wouldn't work in construction for any money. Now, of course, people will take money for anything, but it was profound, the idea that they would say that, I don't want to be part of that. And then I learned that little kids don't want to be part of it. And construction does not have a good image in society. People in schools, guidance counselors and advisors are not recommending that kids go into construction. So it's not a good place to be. And you say, well, what is that image? What's so bad? And it's the images that guy, that brawny guy, that's maybe not that bright, who catcalls and leers at women and curses and plays music like that. That's the image. And they contribute to it. And it's true. It didn't come from nowhere. The plumber's cracks and all that. That's real. So you take 10 men sitting outside a construction site, and they're not all bad. They're mostly good guys. One is bad. So a woman walks past and he starts with her. And you know, as women, every one of you knows, most of you women, there's nothing you can do that's right. You walk away, it's not right. You come back at them, that's right. But walking away is the best thing. But let's say you come back at them with the F word. All of a sudden, you've engaged them. Now it's not just the one guy, it's everybody. Nobody's going to call on that guy and say you shouldn't talk like that. You've got a group mentality here. And that's what happens, and that's what you have, the group mentality, and it's pervasive. But, scenario, out of those 10 people, 2 are women. What happens? It doesn't happen. They're not going to do it. They're just not going to do it. Women will get some respect. It's kind of paternalistic. It's that attitude of not my mother, not my wife, not my daughter, not my sister, not my coworker that I trust, that I work with, that I like. So that is a good influence on the overall image of construction work. And the fact that women get close to these men, what are they doing? They're educating them. They're teaching them that women can do the job. And that's where it starts, on a grassroots basis. I got to watch the time here. You got to get in the inroads. You got to let the guys that are doing it know that we can do it. And so it's simple, isn't it? It seems simple. Get women into it, and everything will change. And that is the truth. Everything will change when we start getting numbers of women into the business. People will start recognizing it'll be better, the image will be better, people will want to do it. And I'll tell you, the image is so bad. Just as an aside, engineers don't want any part of hard hats. The word hard hat itself is a pejorative. There were studies that showed that engineers, there was a group picture being taken, and engineers were asked to wear hard hats, and they refused. I just read a quote from an industry leader that said engineers do not want hard hats used in promotional material or educational material. They do not want to be associated with hard hats. So we've got the problem and we've got the solution. Now, going forward, women can change the face of construction. We talked about ways. How do we do it? The first thing is we've got to defeat the mentality that construction is men's work. And that's something I hit up against hard. But I heard that from a man I was talking to not a month ago. Women don't want to do this work. This is men's work. So again, it's an education thing, and it appears on so many levels. I'm just going to run through fast, starting with the STEM and the interest in promoting women in STEM, and that's a good thing because it's, even though a lot of STEM jobs are construction, but it's getting women into non-traditional roles and getting that mindset that women can do other things. Another thing is, oh, by the way, just so you know, engineers, 20% in schools, women. What was it in 1999, Barbara? 20%. Not good. How many are working? 13%. They quit. A lot of women don't go into the business after they study engineering. And there's a lot of reasons for that, and one of them is discrimination. One of them is that they don't get the promotions. They are harassed. They don't get the nice assignments. They're put on stupid assignments. So that's a problem, and we're dealing with all of that. But in the meantime, we're trying to get more girls into it, and that's a good thing. Then we have training. There were groups like, in New York, we have this non-traditional employment for women group, which is, they take young women and they train them. It's what they call pre-apprenticeship training, because they're really out of nowhere. And they give them this training. I just realized I'm only looking here, and I should be looking here too. They give them training, and then they help them get jobs. And they work, in New York, used to be a union town. It's changing now, but let's talk about it as a union town. They would get the unions to make agreements with them to bring women in, more women. And what they did was they managed to get the unions to agree, or at least most of them, to 10% in the apprenticeship program. And that's huge. That's huge. So a union is saying, we're going to, I don't know if they're guaranteeing it, but we're going to try very hard to get 10% of our apprentices to be women. So I checked it out, and the tin knockers have 16% of their apprentices are women, 16%, which I think is amazing and wonderful. Other unions, no, not so much. But I asked them, and I've called other unions on this, what's the membership? And, I don't know that number. It's 3%. It's still 3%. So we're moving, but we're still there in the same place. So we've got training. We've got state programs that reach out to communities, and they get young women, even ex-prisoners, people that need a new start. Because construction is such a great place. It's such a great job for women. It's lucrative. It's rewarding. So they're reaching out, state programs. And, we don't have to necessarily, and one more thing, schools, essential. To me, all this business, everyone goes to college, no. A lot of kids are going to college that don't want to go. A lot of kids are going to college that really don't belong there. Put trades into the colleges, let's say the community colleges. Teach them how to be a plumber, and at the same time, teach them their English literature. Because lifelong learning is the goal for everybody, and so, we encourage that. But let's give them a trade. And by the way, kids that are graduating from school with their English degrees, they're not finding jobs. You give me a carpenter, he's working, or she's working. So anyway, I was saying that we really don't have to depend on the largesse of companies that come up with, we're going to hire so many women, we have a guideline. states or the unions. There's something else we can do. Let's go back to that 6.9% that we never achieved. It was a guideline. That's what it was. And companies were to use their best efforts. And this is what they said. We can't find women. Women don't want to do this work. And that's what carried the day 40 years ago. And that was the end of it. There was no oversight. There was no mandate. There was nothing. I'm going to mention a word. It's the Q word. And half of you are going to leave. But I'm going to tell you that quotas actually work. I saw it work. I was in the construction industry in the early 70s. And let me tell you something. There were no minorities. And this is union again. It was about my brother. It was about my cousin. It was about my son. And that's how people got into the union. And it was very difficult to get in. And because it was all white males, that's what it became, all white males, and perpetuated itself over and over and over again. And in the 70s, all of a sudden, minorities wanted a piece of the pie. And the government back then said, yes, we want you in. So they set aside quotas, and people had to meet these quotas. And guess what? It was a miracle. They found people that wanted to do the job. So guess what? After a year and a half, 2 years, it was flowing. The numbers were going up, and by 10 years, there was no need for quotas anymore because they had accomplished the goal. They got these people in. And if you look at the numbers now, in many industries, minority participation in the industry exceeds minority participation in the population. So that's amazing. Well, I put this to you, and I'll leave it with you, as they say. 6.9%. In 1978. Imagine if that had been a mandate. What would have happened? If it had been a quota, you must, not use best efforts, you must have 6.9% of your workers have to be female. What would have happened? I'll tell you what would have happened. By now, we'd be in the 20s. And there's no doubt in my mind about that. So I know it's a bad word. People don't like it. Call it hiring guidelines, whatever you want. But I do think the government can step in and make a difference with the number of women that are employed in our field. So just recapping, people to people talking about, I know a woman in construction. Oh, really? How's she doing? She's doing great. Outreach to kids, young kids, girls especially. Voluntary hiring guidelines. State-sponsored programs, federal government-sponsored programs, education. And I just want to say one thing about this idea that people don't want to be construction workers. Yeah, that cuts me to the core. I am so proud of having been involved in this. I mean, I can take a building and I can point to it and I say, I did that. And everyone that's worked on a building or in connection with a building can turn around and say, look at what I did. How many professions can you actually say that? I call construction, and especially the trades, the noble trades. And I think of St. Paul's Cathedral, and I think of the Empire State Building. These are people, men, but now it's men and women, that put themselves into it, that worked hard, that did this. And we don't respect them. We should be honoring them. So this is a great business, and we got to make that, we got to get that out there, and get it out there, especially to women, because women will make it even better. So that's the first part. Now, I'm going to talk about myself a little bit. And I just, excuse me. I have some notes that I'm just going to refer to again. I started out in high school, and I was like, I had 4,000 kids in my school. I was in New York City. There were about 900 in the graduating class. I was the best math student, maybe in the whole school. So my guidance counselor got a hold of me and said, oh, aerospace, engineering, be a mathematician. Right, I wish. Be a math teacher. That's what I was told. The best math student in the school. You can be a math teacher. So I got into college, and somehow I got into a college that had, I wanted to be a lawyer, that had engineering, and I found my way into it, actually. And it wasn't so bad. I studied electrical. And the people, I was a cute kid, and, so it worked out all right. But there were things. I mean, there was one class that we took machinery, which was a very, very difficult class. And back when I went to school, grades ranged from F to A. It wasn't all A's and B's. People failed. Almost every class they were F's, especially in engineering. So I got a C, and that was phenomenal. I'm coming, they had the grades on the door of the door to the classroom, and that's how they did it. They posted the grades back then, so everyone saw everyone's grade. I'm coming around the corner, seeing the boy standing there. She got a C, she's sleeping with him. And that, there was a certain mentality like that, and that repeated itself. I had a class where this was control systems, another difficult class. The teacher was the author of the book that we used. And I went to the class, and then I left. It was the first day. And then I saw some friends later on the day that went to the second class. And the teacher walked in, looked around, and he said, "Thank God there's no women in this class." And that was the mentality. They didn't want women in engineering. They didn't want to teach women. They just wanted it to be the old boys club. So I did the engineering, and I did okay. I was not at the top of the class. It was tough. I mean, I made it into maybe certainly the top half. Of course, I never studied. But I got a summer job it was 5 years for me, and I got a summer job between year 4 and 5, which was drafting at an electrical contractor. My sister worked for a general contractor, and she knew somebody, and she got me a job. And that worked out all right. I mean, again, I was a cute kid, so everyone liked me. And, they used to tease me about being an engineer, "Oh, you're so..." But I was an oddity, and I amused them. The men would say, all of them, or most of them, women could never be electricians. Women could never be electricians because they can't hump pipe, which means to carry pipe. But they like saying the word hump around me. I mean, all the things that electricians do, the guys that hump pipe are the dumbest ones. No offense. If anyone's humping pipe here, I'm sorry. But, I mean, that was the kind of attitude that they had. And that's how they would justify my being there by an engineer. Well, you'd never be an electrician. And they let me go out. I was doing slab drawings, which shows where the conduit goes into the slab, concrete slab, so that everything is concealed, and then you pull the wires through. And I was doing the drawing showing where the pipes went from one spot to another so that they could put them in the slab when the rebar was down before the pour. So as a reward to me, they let me come out to the job and see my work. So towards the end of the summer, I went out to the job with my boss and another guy, and we walked the job, and we came back, and everything was fine. The next day, there was a memo from the general contractor. No women on any job sites. And it actually said, and I would kill to have a copy of this memo. It actually said, women's hairdos are not conducive to the wearing of hard hats. It actually said that. And women's shoes are not acceptable for walking on job sites, so no women. The author of that became my mentor. And I called him my mentor and my tormentor because he harassed me constantly, and we'll get into that in a minute. Anyway, I went full-time to this company after I graduated. There were no jobs for engineers. It's hard to believe, but it's true. And I got married before I graduated, and I had met my husband at work, so everything was different. I was no longer the cute kid. I was Pete's wife, and I was just, I had an accountant or the controller, whoever it was that was doing the checks, and she changed my name to Barbara Ress. I was Barbara Tahan. So I said, I want to keep my maiden name. Absolutely not. I wouldn't allow it. She wouldn't hear of it. And, when my husband got wind of this, he was a young man, and he sort of took it personally. Why don't you want my name? So I ended up with Ress, and that is how I ended up with this last name. I had every intention of keeping my maiden name. Anyway, I left that company because they made me an estimator, which is okay. Kudos to all estimators, important job. I didn't like it, but I sat outside the office of the chief estimator, and I was sitting there, and people would come in selling panels and wire and circuit breakers and stuff like that, and they'd give me stuff to copy because I was the girl. There were other people there, there were men there, but they saw me, and that was the assumption. And you know what? I quit. I left that job, and I went to a big electrical contractor. And again, I was an estimator. But They gave me like a little job to run as a project manager, and it was good. It was Irving Trust Bank, I remember that. And I'll tell you a quick story about that. I got to stop doing this, but I'll do this one. On the job, it was a reno, so you had to put stuff in ceilings. We had this Latino electrician, journeyman electrician, who was maybe my height, maybe a little taller, and very thin and wiry. He was, without a doubt, the most important person on the job because he could get in and out of the spaces. So much for the theory of these big burly men, right? Anyway, I did that job. It was nice. It was fine. We had an opportunity to bid a job in Russia, the Moscow World Trade Center. And we were in the top 3. So and I was working on it. I worked day and night on this. And we went out with the Russians. Let me tell you something. You want to talk about sexist. But it's all okay. They invited us to Moscow, and the whole team was going to go except Barbara. Because Barbara was a woman. You can't send a woman with men to Moscow. So I didn't go. And then not long after that, I got an opportunity to be a project manager on a project called City Cost Center, which is a big building in New York, and it was a very hot building. The project manager there liked me. The labor foreman liked me. And they wanted me to go out into the field. The office was on a floor in the building and work there. The superintendent, the vice president, everybody was happy about it. It was great, and it was a good opportunity for me. Superintendent of labor said, no. He was in charge of all the labor on all our jobs, and he said, no, there will not be a woman in the field. And, there was no pushback against that. They just thought, okay, and that was it. They were my opportunity, so I quit. I gotta move this up. I gotta speed this up a little bit. I went to work for a general contractor. I went to work for the guy that wrote the memo, and they put me on the City Cost Center again, checking the electrician's estimates for change orders, which sounds terrible. And at first I thought, I really shouldn't do this because I know all their labor rates. And then I said, screw it. Let me tell you something. They were thrilled because they hadn't gotten a change order approved in over 2 years. And there was a room full of change orders, like, the size of 2 of these tables together, really literally filled with all trades. And what happened was I finished the electricians, and my boss, my mentor, said to me, okay, you're going to do the plumbing. I said, I don't want to know anything about plumbing. And he said to me, you know what, they want to be paid. So you're going to sit down with them on the drawings, and they're going to teach you how to estimate the vents and the drains and the waste pipe and everything. And you're going to learn it. And I learned plumbing, and I learned steam fitting, and I learned sprinklers, and I learned structural steel. Architectural I pretty much knew, and painting was pretty easy. I learned all these trades, and I became very fluid and versatile. And when the job this was a temporary job when he hired me just to do the electricians, and then it just kept expanding. And when we got a big job, the Grand Hyatt Hotel, they put me on that job. So I was an assistant project manager on that project, and I did the change orders, and of course, and I did requisitions. And then my mentor, Artie, said to me, I want you to be the mechanical superintendent. I don't know if you know what that is, but one of the main jobs of the mechanical superintendent, back before you had BIM and before you had CAD and all this stuff, was making sure everything fit in the walls and the ceilings. And in that building, there was so much existing material, it was impossible to get everything in. I was supposed to I'd sit down in a room with 5 men, all working for each different contractor, and they would all have their drawings, and we'd put everything on one drawing. And every time one thing hit another thing, like a duct hit a pipe or something like that, we would figure out how to fix it. Either we'd flatten the duct or we'd move the pipe, and people work together, tried to work together. I would not, the ceilings were sacrosanct. I wouldn't drop a ceiling. I wouldn't move a light fixture. Everything, I made these people move their equipment, fix their equipment. And there was one, the tin knocker had black iron duct for the kitchen. Black iron duct's expensive. And he made it all already, before coordination. And I made him throw some of it out. Well, the boss in the tin knocker's office, the sheet metal guy, went crazy and called my boss, who was my mentor, and now the president of HRH Construction. She's doing this and she's doing that. She doesn't know what the hell she did. Get her out of there, blah, blah, blah. That made me, that put me totally on the map. After that, I could do no wrong with this guy because I stood up to these guys. And, you know, speaking of that, I'm going to move through this a little bit. And then we had a superintendent who had a limp. He'd been in a car accident. He was in charge of all the, and you all know what a super is. He was in charge of the ballrooms and the meeting rooms in this hotel that I was working on. And his lawyer told him, you can't be working with that limp. He was in an accident. Just stop. And right in the middle, we were moving towards deadlines and stuff like that. We didn't have a superintendent. So I used to go to walk with the bosses in the morning, walk the job site, because I was there at 6 o'clock. So I was there, they let me do it. And I learned a lot by doing that, walking. And we went to breakfast afterwards. So after that incident, my boss said to me, I'm going to make, do you want to be superintendent? Do you want to take this guy's place, Herbie or whatever his name was? I said, really? Do you think I could do it? And he said, do you think I'd ask you if I didn't think you could do it? And that's the way it was. So I became a superintendent. So the truth of the matter is that I have really filled every position in construction. I am an engineer and I have done some design work. I was a draftswoman. I was an estimator. I was project manager. I was assistant project manager, senior project manager. I was a superintendent. So I really know the business, and that's good for me. And when I was working on the Hyatt, I met this guy and his wife who were the developers for the Hyatt Hotel, and that was Donald and Ivana Trump. And I impressed them. They liked the fact that I stood up to people. I'd go to meetings with the architects. I was the only underling that went to the architects' meetings. You know, it was the project manager and the superintendent and the owner, the architect, engineers, and me. And, you know, they would say things like, you know, why did this happen? And Trump didn't want anything to happen, anything to change. He didn't want to spend any money. And the architect would say, oh, it was the construction manager. You know, he'd be shaking. I just realized I was imitating something I did not mean to do. And I'd say, what the hell are you talking about? Your drawings are screwed up. And they love that. The Trumps love that. So after the project was almost finished, we were at a black tie event, and Donald and Ivana were there, and I had my husband with me, and I wanted him to meet them. So I brought him over to meet Donald, and Donald shakes his hand and says, she's great. She's going to work for me. I'm going to double her salary. Barbara, call Ivana tomorrow, set up a meeting. That was the extent of the conversation. And I did. I set up a meeting, and I went to their apartment on Fifth Avenue, and just a quick story. Everything was white. The carpets were white. The sofas were white. The bar was white wood. The pillows were white. And Ivana, in her being nice, said, let me offer you a glass of orange juice. And I'm thinking, this is the last thing I'm going to do. Absolutely not. So anyway, in this meeting, Donald told me all about, you know, how great Trump Tower was going to be, and it was going to be an iconic building, and it was going to be the only one of its type, and it's, you know, he had a crew in the Hyatt, and he wasn't bringing them over. He was hiring me. And why? Why was he doing that? Well, for one thing, he said, you're a killer. Me? But actually, I was a killer to him because I stood up to people, and that's what he wanted. A killer means a lot more things to him, and I learned that eventually. But in terms of that moment in time, I filled the bill. And he said something interesting. Well, one thing he said is, you're going to be my representative. You're going to be like a Donna Trump on this project. I said, that's cool, you know. But he said to me, and this, you may have heard me say this on TV, men are better than women. And maybe he was limiting it to our industry, I don't know, but he made this statement. But a good woman is better than 10 good men. And he believed it. And maybe he thought that was a compliment. You know, it took me many, many years. I accepted it. I said, it's not sexist, you know, it's a reflection of this business that we're in. And it took me, talking to my daughter, actually, who told me, really, it was about women working harder and working smarter. You all know this. And for a lot oftentimes for less money. That's what it was about. He got the best person. I was the best person. You know, I went around saying, Donald gave me this great break. And you know, as he became worse and worse, I became a little bit less charitable with him. He hired me because I made him a lot of money. So he got me because he wasn't doing a favor to me. And the fact that it was the only woman, I think he liked that. I think he liked being out there, that people would talk about him. Because when I started on Trump Tower, I started getting publicity. And I was on TV, I was on this show To Tell the Truth, where people pretended to be me, and I was me. And people would ask us questions. But all of a sudden that dried up. And it dried up, I think, because he didn't want me getting that much publicity. But, you know, what happened was I would be, you know, working on the job, and someone would call, and, you know, they'd need, and it was an important person, they need to speak to me, and I'd get on, I'm not talking to you, I want to talk to a man. That really happened, honestly. I'm not making this stuff up. I said, well, I'm in charge of the project. Well, I want to speak to the man in charge. I said, well, that's Donald Trump, and you're not going to talk to him. And basically, you know, over time, I got, you know, more into it, and people started respecting me more. You know, there's lots to tell about what happened at Trump Tower. I wish I could tell you the stories about the celebrities and, you know, things that happened, the union problems we had, but, you know, I don't want to go through all of it. Just, you know, things that, it was an incredible, Trump was absolutely right. It was an incredible project. There was nothing like it. We were building a retail mall without anchor stores. You probably know what anchor stores are. The only interior retail mall that was of any note in the country was Water Tower in Chicago. And they had, I think, Bloomingdale's. They had an anchor. They may have had two. Here we were doing something unheard of. And we weren't bringing in, at the time, you know, the locals or the chains. We were bringing in people from all over the world, the best designers, the best jewelers, the best shoers, or, you know, whatever they call them. All the best companies, and they were paying rent like you wouldn't believe. You wouldn't believe. It was unheard of, the rents they were paying. And that was just the retail. So it was an incredible project. We had an office building there, and then we had the apartment building. We got all sorts of famous people. We didn't get Princess Diana, like Trump said. And, you know, he said that she wanted an apartment, and he was smart. He knew that they weren't going to say no comment. They were, the royal family was not going to reduce itself to commenting on whether or not she had interest in an apartment in Trump Tower. But Richard Nixon came, and he had his daughter with him, Patricia, and he looked at apartments for her. And I'll tell you a real quick story. I keep doing this, but I got to tell you this story. You walk into the lobby of the apartment floor, and it's recessed because they're going to put marble in it. So there's an elevator, and the elevator has a base there that, you know, is going to meet up with the marble, but right now you have to step over it. Nixon goes to get into the elevator, and he trips. Okay, that happens. People trip. The next floor that we go to, it happens again. He trips again. So we get up to the third time, and we're about to walk towards it, and he takes me by the arm, and he says, be careful. I love that story. So anyway, I'm going to sort of rush through the rest of this. I did become very well known in the field, and I did get a lot of publicity. I learned a lot of things. I learned some things from Trump. I taught him some things, too. But I went on to do a project on Madison Avenue and 61st Street, which is, she mentioned it, it was the Harts Mountain job. And for some reason, the head of Harts Mountain put my name on it. So my name is on this building. You know, going back to what I was talking about, the noble traits, how proud am I that my name is on a building? I mean, you know, it was a stroke of luck. I mean, I'm not even sure I deserve it. But I went to that, and it was a little bit of a come down after Trump Tower, but something interesting happened. I got pregnant, and I was going to have twins. Here I am. I've got 15 years in the business or so under my belt, and everybody knew me, and everybody knew I was good. All of a sudden, I was just another woman having a baby. She won't come back. I mean, that was the talk in the industry. Back then, I know it's hard to relate to that for some of you because you're so young, but this was 1985. Some of you weren't even born then. But that was the attitude about women. They quit their jobs when they had babies, or they slowed down, or something like that. And I never did that. After they were born, I think I took off a total of 2 weeks altogether, and they were born premature because I was working the day I gave birth. But it was just the attitude, the pervasive attitude about what women do and what women should do. And I'm going to talk about the circumstances of giving birth a little bit later. But going back to Trump, I went back to him after I did this project. He forgets that I quit the first job, and then I quit the second job, and I actually quit the third job. He somehow thinks he fired me. But I don't. And he got it into a publication. And you know what? I had to sue them. I'm a lawyer. And I settled with them because it was a lie. Anyway. So I worked on several projects for him, including the Plaza Hotel, where I worked with Ivana. And she was the president of the hotel, and I wish I had time to tell you how all that worked. But he put her in charge, and then he started resenting her because she had power. We had a party for her, and he went to the party, and all these hotel employees were there, and they were lauding her and adoring her. And nobody noticed him. He was not the star. And he started resenting that, and that's part of what happened with their marriage falling apart. She told me one day, and again, I went to her office. I had a problem with Donald, and I thought maybe he was going to let me go because he brought somebody in to see what I was doing on the plaza to check my work. I don't know what the hell it was, but why would he do that? So I went to see Ivana and said, Donald, I don't know. He's called me over to his meeting. He may take me off the plaza. And she said, don't worry, Barbara, she called me, or the Barbara. I will give you the best reference you ever got. I will recommend you. I will tell people how great you are because you are great. And then we started talking about Donald. And all of a sudden, she starts crying. And she says, you don't know what he's like. You have to deal with him 8 or 10 or 12 hours a day. It's 24/7 for me. And I felt so sorry. And I knew something was amiss. And that was the beginning of the end. It was so poignant that she did that. And I maybe shouldn't even share it, but what the hell. But anyway, so I worked on the plaza. I worked on the West Side yards. I worked on a project in California. I quit, and then I came back as a consultant on the California project, and I stayed for a number of years. So all in, I probably worked about 16 or 18 years for him. I went to another company, and I worked for them. Then I decided to go to law school, and I went to law school. And I never really got into law because 2 things happened. The first thing was, I figured with all this experience, I'm going to be golden. I'm going to walk into a construction law firm, and they're going to just grab me up, and I'm going to be great. They didn't want anything to do with me. They didn't want somebody that was 50 years old that knew all the stuff about the business and commanded a decent price. They wanted to put, and this is no disparagement to lawyers. I know there are a lot of you here, and I am one too. But they wanted to put paralegals and kids, not paralegals, but new kids out of school, which I had just graduated, and pay them $75 an hour and charge the client $300 an hour. And they didn't think they needed my knowledge because they knew everything about construction. So, of course, they didn't. So I went back into construction. I supervised some work on a famous church in New York City, and that went on for quite a while. After that, I went to work for a company that had a patent for cleaning frack water, which is a story for another time. It was a startup, and I was their general counsel and in charge of their development. And that didn't pan out, so I went to work for a general contractor, and I took a position that I shouldn't have. I have to admit it. A senior project manager was not something I should do, but I wanted the job, and I needed the job at the time, and that did not pan out for me. And that's the last time I worked full time was for this company. But now I'm doing mediation and arbitration for the AAA, which is very, lucrative and extremely rewarding, especially when you're doing mediation. You get people to settle lawsuits that could go on for years. So I love that work, and it's hard work, but I love it. And I'm doing public speaking. and I'm doing some writing. I wrote my book, and I write articles every so often for the Daily News about Donald. And they pay me. They pay me, so that makes me a professional. Anyway, I'm way over. Oh, my God, I got 4 minutes left. All right. Stop right there. You should have stopped me before. I'm going to talk about Me Too, and we're going to have to go through this real fast. What happened to me? I wish I could tell you every story, but I don't have time. And I'm going to cut. I'm not going to start where it was going to start. I'm going to go right to my stories. When I was with the estimator, an estimator with a big electrician, there was a guy there who was the assistant chief estimator. And estimating, you all know, comes in spurts. You can be working around the clock on a big job, getting the bid in. And then there won't be anything major for another couple of weeks, and then you'll get another. So we had time in between. And what this guy did, this assistant, would hold court with all the young people, and he would, talk to them about the old days. I think it was a CB from the Navy. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he would attack me. What's the matter with you? Why do you want to be a man? What kind of a woman are you? And this would go on, and I'd stand there and take it, which is interesting. And I internalized it. And this is a true story, and it's sad for me to say this, but I'm going to share it because you're going to benefit from this. I let it get to me. I started not really caring about the way I looked. I stopped wearing makeup. I didn't really comb my hair. I was thinking maybe something was wrong with me. And that went on. Finally, I straightened out, and I got another job. This was when I moved into the field with the general contractor. And then I got into the actual field when I was working as a superintendent and a mechanical super. The harassment that I endured was horrible. I can give you examples. I don't want to. But suffice it to say, I took it all in. And I blamed myself for it, like rape victims do. I thought it was my fault. I thought I did something wrong. Here I am showing up at the job site in an old army jacket from the Vietnam War and jeans, and you couldn't tell from looking at me, if you were 20 feet away, I would look like one of the crowd. But I'm getting all this sex talk and all this other stuff, and I'm thinking, what did I do? Did I encourage this? Did I do something wrong? Don't ever let this happen to you, okay? It is never the victim's fault. But I did. And this changed me. All of this changed me. And I was a different person because of that. And real quickly, I got to say that a point in time came when I thought I had missed my opportunity to have kids. I thought that I had chosen an industry that wouldn't let me do that. And that was foreclosed for me. And a miracle happened, and I had kids. I wouldn't have. I mean, I was just so into what I was doing in my career that I let that happen to me. I became a different person. And when I went to Catholic school, if you said hell in my mother's house, you got soap in your mouth. There was no question about that. And here I am. F word, F word, F word. Because you couldn't do anything else. You couldn't, if you didn't do it, they would say they can't talk around you. And when you did it, they called you patty mouth. But real stories about people walking into meetings where I'm the only girl and talking about, oh, Barbara's so great, she's got balls under her skirt, Like that was something nice to say, that was a compliment. Anyway, I wish I could take more time on this, but the bottom line is I didn't realize all of this until I saw what they did to Anita Hill in the Clarence Thomas confirmation hearings. This woman who had the bravery, and she didn't volunteer it, she was sort of coaxed into it and pushed into it to complain about a venal harasser, went up there and to stop the United States from having a Supreme Court justice that was a sexual harasser. And they grilled her. They excoriated her. They said, what the hell is, they didn't say, what's the matter with you? Why didn't you quit? And you've heard our president say, if a woman's harassed, she should quit. Why didn't you quit the job? Why did you take it? You're lying. This didn't happen. And I sat there, and I was glued to the TV set. And I realized I know the answer to that question. What's the answer? Because I did it. I did all of that. I took all of that shit, excuse the expression. I let them get to me. And why did I do that? Because I had no choice. That was the business I was in. What was I going to do, go run to a contractor that didn't have mean guys that picked on women? changed my attitude about everything. It was like a rebirth for me, and it helped me to deal with some of the things that I have had to deal with. And I don't want this happening to you. So what do we do when this kind of thing happens, when you're harassed at work? And I'm going to say that you've got to deal with it in several ways. Number one, something happens, tell your girlfriends, tell the women you work with, tell your mentor. And by the way, everyone has to have a mentor, and it should be a woman. So young women should seek out women with experience. They don't have to be the president of the company, just women that have been there. And older women that have the experience, be a mentor. It's the most important work you can do. If somebody doesn't come to you, you go out there and you find somebody. It's giving back. And women, that's what it's going to be, women and women. I'm going to sort of skip a lot of important stuff here. I want to stress a couple of things. Number one, 10% of harassments are reported, okay? 10%. If you get into court, and this would have made more sense with something else I was going to say, but if you get into court, the chances of winning in court are 4%. People want you to believe that poor men, they're being dragged into court. And first of all, the complaints, most of them don't get addressed, or they get addressed on the local level. A lot of times, there are no results, nothing gained. And what happens to the woman? She becomes a troublemaker, and she's known as that. And there are retaliations, there's retributions. So women don't complain. But if something happens to you, here's what you do. First of all, you write it down. You talk to other women. You talk to your mentor. You keep track of this. If it's really bad, then you got to report it. But before you do that, you go up to the guy and you talk to him and you say, I don't like this and I want you to stop. Because two reasons. Number one, some of these guys with pornography in our society and everything else, some of these guys actually believe women like this. Oh, I thought, I didn't know. I thought that we were bantering. So you must, and I can't say it again, you must tell the harasser that he is hurting you and you don't want it to go on. Then the next thing is keep a record, and if it's bad, maybe you got to complain. If it's not so bad, if you've learned from me, if you've learned from your sisters in the business, if you've learned from your mentor to not take this personal, not let it get to you, not internalize it and change you, let it go. Let it go, because it is not worth it. You're going to find that it's not worth it. Life is cruel. Life is unfair. This is what happens. This is the industry we're in. This is the road we've chosen. So we've got to be self-help. We've got to make it better for us to control. Oh, I have 7 minutes. I control what's happening to us and work with other women and help us overcome this sexual harassment. Now, if it's bad, first of all, if you get assaulted, you go to the company, you call the police. No questions about it, no ifs, ands, or buts. But if it's something that, is repeated, then you got to report it. You got to go through company protocol. You got to do it the right way. If it still gets repeated after that, if the company doesn't do anything about it, you may have to do an EEOC complaint or a lawsuit. EEOC is Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and they will take sexual harassment complaints. And there are not many. Go look at the statistics. Oh, men, we can't talk to women anymore. Anything you say, they're going to drag you in on a sexual harassment claim. It is so wrong. This doesn't happen. And when you finally get to court, when you're in that courtroom, and the test is, did this guy, and it's usually a guy, sometimes guy on guy, sometimes it's woman on man. I could talk about that for 10 hours. But as far as that particular circumstance is concerned, man on woman, you have to show two things, and this is a Supreme Court decision that requires this. One, it has to be severe. The judge has to think it is really, really bad. And number two, it has to be pervasive. It can't just happen once. It's got to be, unless it's really severe, it's got to be repeated. And I'll give you two cases where this was not overcome. A woman whose breasts were fondled by a boss. Judge said, not severe. A man who was threatened with rape 2 or 3 times by his supervisor. Judge said, not pervasive. So that'll give you an idea of what you're up against. And I'm not discouraging people from reporting. I think you should report, especially if it's happening to someone else. You get together with that other person, and the two of you go together. And by the way, going back to when you tell the perpetrator that you don't like it, have someone with you. So that when he comes up and he stands in court and he says, I didn't know that she didn't like it. Intent, lawyers, there's no intent, there's no crime, right? You have something to put the lie to that. And they'll all say it, they'll all say that, and that's a lot of the cases, and not so much in court, but in the tribunals, in the company, your hearing boards and stuff like that. I didn't know, okay, because they don't want it to be sexual harassment in their companies. They want it all to go away. They want things to be hunky-dory. The best bet a woman has to win is to get a settlement, because companies don't want this getting out, that they've got all these programs that don't work, by the way, that are designed by white men. And, you know, if I had time going back to it, getting women into the C-suites, making the decisions, sure, they're on the diversity panels. Yeah, they're on the diversity panels. But they're not going to mandate that they're not going to decide that we're going to have a mandate 10% women. That comes from the top of the echelon. So we got to get more women up there. But going back to this idea of settlement, that's that you see it with some of the big Me Too cases now. Getting the settlement as opposed to going into court, because in court you're probably going to lose. It's just that severe and pervasive is a high standard. Let me leave you with one other thing, and now I actually am going to use this. This is a tweet from our president. And he says, I gave a woman named Barbara Ress a top New York construction job. He gave me that job when that was unheard of. And now she is nasty. First nasty woman. So much for a nice thank you, he says. And the next slide is me. I asked my daughter to make a sign for me saying, I'm the woman that built Trump Tower. I was thinking something like this. She did this humongous sign. She's a photographer. And we went to the Women's March, the first one, 2017, with that sign. And believe it or not, you can see Bad Gal Riri on the top. This is an Instagram photo. Rihanna put it on Instagram. It got 1,047,925 likes. I was in, my son was in a lot of different papers that covered the signs, and it was just the most incredible experience. I can't tell you, if you were there, you know what it was like. The camaraderie, the joy, the energy, the commitment to doing something. It was palpable. It was amazing to me. And I had a meeting with a friend of mine from college. We had dinner after the march, and you know, we went to this bar, and he was a restaurant, and then we were sitting at the bar, and people were talking about the march, and my friend said to me, he was a doubter, you know, he's actually a conservative, and how he's my friend, I don't know, but anyway, well, did you learn anything? What did you learn? And I said, yeah, I learned 2 things, and here's what I learned. If it's going to happen, if change is going to happen, if success is going to happen, it's going to be the women that do it. Stop looking up to men to do this for us. And the second thing was, the time is now. And you see it. You see it everywhere. You saw it with Me Too. You saw it with the midterm elections. So we got to keep that up. And I know that you're going to. I'm proud of you. You are the best and the brightest as far as I'm concerned, because you wouldn't be here if you weren't. So let's do it. Thank you. Please email me or call me or buy my book. You'll love it. It's funny as hell. And thank you again. I'm sorry you're chasing me. Oh, we're doing questions.
Yeah,
I forgot. Yeah.
We'll do a few minutes of questions.
Okay. Yeah, you forgot to separate it out so that I had 50 and 10, and that's why I was thrown off on the timing.
of
Okay, good. Anyone have a question? Yeah, back there. Is there a mic? Can we get back to this lady? Woman? Lady. You get used to saying things. I mean, girl was such a big thing for me. Now I call all my friends girls.
Good afternoon, Barbara.
Hi, what's your question?
My name is Marie Athey. I'm with Hunt AECOM. And I just want to know, like, from your experience, how you would have handled in the past, if it's not sexual harassment, but if you're being sabotaged by another male, what did you do to...
You know, I wasn't really sabotaged. I had an incident where the superintendent who hated me, in charge of the whole project, set me up for something, but I wasn't hurt. I understand that the women are given faulty tools to work with. Ladders are removed when they're up working on something. The ladder is taken away. There are a lot of bad things that still go on, and that's part of the speech that I didn't talk about. But you gotta do the same things that I said about harassment. And by the way, it is considered harassment, which by the way is considered discrimination. You gotta report it. You gotta talk to your people, and you gotta see if you can make the inroads and get that information, because that's serious stuff. That's not a guy saying, hey baby, that's serious stuff, and you gotta report it. And you know what? You're gonna pay for it. And there are martyrs, and you gotta be one of the martyrs.
I wrote a blog about this because OSHA had put out some statistics about workplace violence against women in the trades. And do you think that by having a more inclusive environment that it would make women more safe in the field?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, Barbara. I'm Brittany from ISEC Inc. I'm over here.
Hi.
How you doing? Not so much a question, just want to say thank you for being real, thank you for being honest, and thank you for breaking down all the doors. Like, I appreciate it so much.
Thank you very much. I broke down some doors. You know, my favorite president made a statement that I have to share with you because you may not have heard it, but he actually said this. He said, I broke the glass ceiling for women in construction. He broke it. What the hell was I doing? And I didn't break the glass ceiling. That ceiling, you know that ceiling's still there. I mean, you know, we know it. Well, maybe made some chips in it, but.
Michael Dory, sorry about
Hi.
that. And I wanted to find out, I'm with AECOM Hunt, you were saying that you needed more women in C-suite positions, but do you also think that more women on boards would help?
Oh, absolutely. And you know, some countries have requirements that a number of women be on boards. And we don't. And you know, I don't know that we'll ever get there, but I would like to see some hiring requirements. But I was thinking about this before I came. I was thinking, should I share this? And here's an opportunity. I did a speech in, I'm trying to remember if it was Austin. No, it wasn't. It was Louisville. And on the plane, I sat next to a man who had been at another convention. And I'm not going to say where he was from, but it turned out that he was from a very, very big construction company in New York, very well known, a household name. And he was, you know, among the other things, he did a lot of things. He was very big in the executive VP. He also was involved in hiring. We started talking about women. And I asked him, do you have any women project executives? And you know, that's project executive, sort of a big job. It's not, it's just one step below vice president. No, he said, no. There aren't any. And I go, I'm going like this. And we can't find any, but we have women project managers. And I said, well, you know, do you have any women superintendents? Because to me, super is the job. It's like the Army. Back when people were getting promoted, there were women in the Army, but they never became generals. And the reason for that was they did not have combat experience. And in order to really get that last promotion, you had to have that combat experience. And that's what I look at being a superintendent as. And I'm not saying you're not going to get it, be a PM and you'll get to the top, but having that experience of being in the field and actually directing men's work, that is invaluable. And so if you can get in as an assistant super, I don't know if, some of you are doing that kind of thing, or encourage women to be assistant supers in your company or superintendents, that's a great idea. But where was I? I got off the track here. So what were we talking about? Just, Oh, yeah, women on boards, thank you. So, this guy. So anyway, he starts talking about other things. And I'm realizing this guy's not all there. He's not complete. He's not being honest with me. And he tells me about his wife. And I'm not shaming people, women that stay at home. I question them, and I respect them, and whatever they do, they do. He starts telling me, and this is a true story, how only women can deal with children, deal with young children, how they, have to stay home and be with them because they breastfeed them. And we started talking about breastfeeding, and how a man can't do it. And I'm thinking to myself, boy, this guy's got some screwy ideas. And he did. He really did. Ideas about women and what they should do. And, I'm thinking, and this is something I learned from my daughter, because I went back to work, like I said, two weeks after I gave birth. You're right, mister, you're right. So you know what we got to do? We got to make sure that we let women have paid leave at home so they can breastfeed their kids for a couple of months. But that notion to a guy like him would be so, out of the blue. We would just never think about it. But his attitude about women and what their role is and how well they do and how important they are. Oh, we have all these programs, and I think, bullshit. You really don't care. You're not looking to push women. You would have a project executive. Don't tell me there's none out there. You would have women supers. So again, I go back to what I said before. It's got to be the women. And so yes, to get them into the C-suite, absolutely. How we're going to do that, I'm not sure, because I don't think that set-asides and quotas is going to work. People demanding it, women in the rank and file demanding it, women that are near the top pushing themselves up. I mean, that's, I guess, the only way that it's going to happen. And you'll have martyrs at that, too, but it's got to be done. Oh.
Hi. So I've dealt with sexual harassment from people with other companies. I'm a subcontractor. Thankfully, I don't deal with it within my company, but
Okay.
How do you address it with someone who's your customer without offending them and affecting you getting work with them in the future?
You pick your spots. You make a choice. It's as simple as that. You take it if you have to, like I did, and you live with it, or you take a stand and you're going to lose the client. I mean, it's unfortunate. Like I said before, life is unfair. This should not happen. But that is definitely sexual harassment. I think your own employer is involved on that, as well as the outside person that's harassing you. And that's a shame. I wish people didn't do that. And maybe someday they won't do it as much. It'll always be there, but hopefully, as knowledge and Me Too and all that stuff. And you see the backlash, by the way, to Me Too. Backlash is horrible. We can't do anything. Men are the victims and all that stuff. And, it's like a pendulum that swings all the way this way, and it's going to come back to the center. And the Me Too movement is going to be one of the most profound, most effective things that ever happened in this country. So I got to go, I guess. It was nice talking to you.